we go ahead and get started, I know some people will continue to come in over the next few minutes. I know traffic was a challenge for many of us, but so glad that you're here. Good evening and welcome to Common Core Standards Education Summit. My name is Randy Hultgren, Congressman from the 14th Congressional District. It's my privilege to serve this district, and so glad to be with you tonight, and so glad that each and every one of you are here tonight. I actually met some of you who are here tonight in the mobile offices that we've held around McHenry County over the last couple of weeks, and I want to thank you for your great input that helped lead to the program tonight and putting this together. I also really want to thank McHenry County College for opening up their doors and providing a great venue for us to do this. And I'll actually be meeting with Vicki Smith, the president of MCC, tomorrow, as well as other community college presidents as part of my Higher Education Advisory Board, which I formed this year. No doubt, Common Core will be an important topic of discussion at that meeting tomorrow. We all have our eyes on job creation and ensuring that our kids have the right skills to compete in the marketplace and secure good jobs. I also want to thank our distinguished panelists and moderator who will be helping sort through the many issues surrounding Common Core standards. Tonight, I really am honored to host this event, which brings together educators, administrators, thought leaders, and parents to have an open and honest discussion about an issue affecting one of the most important concerns, our kids. My goal tonight is for us to have a discussion of all aspects of the new standards and to hear from all sides of the issue so that we can get a little bit smarter and leave tonight with a clearer view of what the impact of the standards will have on our children's future. A new poll just out last week from Phi Delta Kappa and Gallup showed that nearly 2 out of 3 Americans have never even heard of the Common Core state standards. And despite the fact that our schools in Illinois have already begun the process of implementing these standards, 55% of parents of kids in public schools don't know anything about them. Regardless of your position, it's clear that we need to educate the public on what the Common Core standards actually are and what they mean for our children's education. Let me start by just throwing out a few numbers at you as we begin this evening. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, only 32% of our state's 4th graders scored proficient on their reading exams, meaning that they were reading at grade level. This after spending nearly $12,000 a year for each student's education up to that point. According to the Trends in International Mathematics and Science study of 2011, which compared the ability of students from around the world, U.S. 4th graders were among the top 15 worldwide in math, but they still came behind countries such as Singapore, Korea, China, and Belgium. We were a little better in science, scoring in the top 10, but countries like Hong Kong, Japan, and Russia were still ahead of us. And the numbers didn't get much better when you get to 8th graders either. Here's another one that's sobering. The number of schools in Illinois labeled failing by the federal government continues to increase. In fact, in 2011, only 8 of our public high schools made adequate yearly progress, or AYR, and all the rest failed. Only 8 high schools in the entire state. As co-chair of the House National Labs and Science Caucus, I actively support raising the bar for STEM education, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I have been very active in leading the effort to educate lawmakers about the incredible opportunities that are on the horizon in science relating to medical discoveries, mobility, transportation, and more. We can't capitalize on these opportunities without a future generation of students who are experts in the necessary fields of study. While these statistics are grim, we cannot discount some of the progress we've made in certain areas over the years. There are model schools in our state that are doing incredible things with students. Getting a better grasp of their success stories and duplicating them across the state is a great idea, and we want to make sure that the Common Core doesn't get in the way of that. But we are still behind where we should be if we are to prepare our kids for adulthood. If we are to stay competitive in the world, if we are to cultivate educated and engaged students who will one day lead our businesses, our churches, our schools, and our government. This isn't just about college readiness. This is about arming our children with skills they can use to enter the workplace, be it a manufacturing plant, agricultural production facility, grocery store, hospital, elementary school, or laboratory. Kids today need a greater grasp of technology than any previous generation in order to be able to succeed. There have been all sorts of attempts in history to address our education problems, from new math to standardized testing to charter schools, Goals 2000 to No Child Left Behind, and now Race to the Top, pushing the Common Core. So what exactly is Common Core? The panel will address this in much more detail, but very briefly, the Common Core State Standards are a set of learning standards in English Language Arts, or ELA, and math that would replace any previous K through 12 standards in Illinois or other states that adopt them. They were originally developed by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other private companies and organizations. The aim was to create a national set of standards that would extend uniformly across every state. Many states agreed to adopt these standards in order to compete for the President's Race to the Top funding, others to obtain waivers to the requirement from No Child Left Behind. In 2010, the Illinois Board of Education adopted the standards and joined the now more than 45 states in adopting the Common Core and its plans to complete implementation by the end of 2014-2015 school year. The cost for implementation will generally rest with the states. Some estimates put the total cost to Illinois, including teacher training, new books and material, and computer technology, in an area above $700 million over 7 years. Other estimates have lower costs. Additionally, Illinois will adopt a new set of standardized tests by joining a consortium of 19 other states called PARC, the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, which creates students' assessments that align with the Common Core. Starting next year, students' test scores will be compared against other states using the Common Core as the national benchmark. We can all agree that we want to fix our education system and make sure our kids are ready for college and ready for the workforce. So we should be open to new ideas because some new methods may hold a key, yet we should be cautious too. After doing your own research on the Common Core, or if this is your first time hearing about it, some of you may have some questions or concerns, such as how will these standards affect parental and local control over education? What do the teachers think? How do the standards compare to those Illinois has used in the past? Can we tailor the standards to our classrooms, or will we be stuck in a one-size-fits-all? Testing is good as a diagnostic, but we should be cautious when rating a kid, whether he's a success or a failure, he or she is a success or a failure, when they're merely into adolescence. The Chinese are good at making and creating and teaching kids to be good test takers. Will this PARC assessment simply make our kids to be good test takers? Or will they encourage them to become entrepreneurs and innovators, keeping our nation competitive in the world? How will the curriculum change? How will students with different learning styles succeed? Can there be flexibility for students that are late bloomers? Can we afford it? Is this just another fad? My hope is that after tonight, all of us will become better educated about this new approach to turning Illinois schools around and be able to answer some questions if we think this is the right step or not. We need to better understand what our state is undertaking and whether we should continue ahead or take a step back, like states like Indiana has done, and reassess our options. Quickly, I want to lay out the ground rules for this evening. We have some wonderful panelists that are going to be speaking. We have a great moderator who's going to be directing this, and we will have significant time for questions from you. So we want to hear from you. We want to have experts answer the questions, and the responses will be quick so that we can get through as many questions as possible. But I want you to know there will be some rules that we will follow, just showing respect for each other, respect for other people who have come tonight, respect for all of our panelists. So first and foremost, no heckling, no speaking out of turn. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers. Please only speak if you have a microphone. No signs are allowed in the building. And please adhere to these guidelines or you'll be asked to leave. So again, I do want to thank you for being here. I look forward to this evening. I am looking forward to learning as much as the rest of you, of understanding what really Common Core is all about and what the future looks like, and if this is something that we should be excited about or that we should be very scared about. And I hope we'll be able to come to some of those decisions by the end of this evening. So thank you for coming. We need even more parental involvement in education. By attending this summit, you are showing you care about our kids and you are engaged, and we need more people like you. With that, I would like to introduce Dr. Susie Morrison, Deputy Superintendent of the Illinois State Board of Education and Chief Education Officer, for some brief comments. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Morrison. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And again, just to echo the Congressman's comments, thank you to all of you who cared enough to come out this evening to listen to the presenters, to learn the facts. It just demonstrates how much you care about education and our children. I was asked for a few minutes to talk just a little bit about the Illinois context, how we got here and where we are with the implementation of the Common Core in Illinois, and I appreciate that opportunity. In 2008, our State Board of Education, much like you have local boards of education, we have a 9-member State Board of Education, directed us to take a look at our current Illinois learning standards. Now, many of you probably know that we had Illinois learning standards that were adopted in 1997. And those standards were written by thousands of people at different grade levels and from different areas who came together to write expectations for what it is we thought our students should know and be able to do. And those Illinois learning standards had been in place without revision for more than a decade. So in 2008, we started at the high school actually, because what we believed was we had a system, a K-12 system, that was in some ways disconnected for what was coming next. We knew that the world was changing. And we believed that about 90% of the future jobs, good paying jobs, will require some kind of post-secondary education or training. In the world that many of us grew up in, or our parents grew up in, a high school diploma was good enough. But for these students today, there's an expectation that a high school diploma will likely not be good enough. They will be lifelong learners, and we should have that expectation. Illinois has given the ACT test as part of their 11th grade assessment also for more than a decade. As you know, the ACT is used as a college entrance measure, a gauge. And what we learned with that ACT test as recently as the past administration is only about 25% of those 11th graders that took the ACT met all the benchmarks to be ready to be successful as a college freshman. Now, let me make it clear. We have no assumption that all of our students should go to a four-year college or university. They should not. Many will go to community colleges, many will go to trade schools, vocational schools, but what we want to do is make certain that we are giving them the knowledge, skills, and abilities in a K-12 education system so that they can make those choices. They have opportunities to realize their dreams and become the good citizens that the Congressman spoke about. So in 2008, we met with college and university instructors, and we asked, what is it that you're expecting? How should we be changing our standards? And while we were having that conversation, and I'll tell you, what I'm going to tell you here tonight is the truth. You'll weigh out and gauge if you want to believe it or not. While we were having these conversations, other states were doing some of the same work because we had all had standards for a decade or so. And I was in a meeting with Superintendent Cook, and he was with his other state superintendents from about 25 other states. And they were talking with one another. And the conversation went something like, well, we're about to revise our learning standards now, our K-12 learning standards. And another chief said, well, we're doing the same thing. And the conversation evolved. And that evening, they said, well, do we really need to do this 50 times over? Or is there an opportunity for us to work together? Should our expectations for what our students need to know and be able to do to be successful in Illinois be so different than what we expect of students in Minnesota or Massachusetts or choose a state? So that evening, an impromptu meeting took place, and the state superintendents, Dr. Cook and his counterparts, came together to have that first conversation about, could we work together on this? Always with the backdrop of realizing that our students today may very well not come back to our communities. They may not come back to our state. They may work out of our country because the world in which they are living in is a global society, very different than the world in which many of us grew up in, frankly. So they came together and said, you know, we'd like to talk about this more. So a few months later, the Council of Chief State School Officers, which is the state superintendent national organization, held a meeting right here in the Chicago area. And 35 states were represented at that meeting. And they said, we really would like to work on this together. And the work began. Experts from around the country came together to really look at international standards, to look at college expectations, community college expectations, work expectations, to help define a set of standards. And the standards are, as the Congressman said, a set of expectations. What is it that we expect our children to know and be able to do so they can make some choices in the world in which they will live and in which they will work? It's not a curriculum. It's not a set of textbooks. It's not resources. All those decisions are made at the local level by local boards of education and local administrators and teachers. This is simply what is it that we expect students to know and be able to do so they'll have opportunities. So that work began. Went through several renditions. Thousands of educators and others had opportunities to comment on those Illinois learning or on those Common Core standards. There were many revisions. In fact, I believe that the final didn't look very much like the first one at all. When we got a final draft of the standards, we brought together groups of educators and we said, tell us what you think. Are they good? Are they bad? And in Illinois, overwhelmingly, our teachers told us, while they may not be perfect, these are so much better than what we have now. They are clearer, there are fewer of them, they really help us define what's most important and allow us to spend time on teaching what's most important. When we wrote the Illinois Learning Standards in the mid-1990s, we really did what a lot of other states did. We came up with a set of standards that were meant to be everything to everybody. We've never done it before. They were a mile wide and an inch deep. In our Illinois Learning Standards, we have had what somebody thought would be nice for kids to know and be able to do. And we were able to change the conversation, and it's not a revolution, it really is an evolution. To ask that question, not just what it is nice for kids to know and be able to do, but what do they really need to know and be able to do? And our educators overwhelmingly said, these are better. And it really has caused them to step up. The easy thing to do is status quo. Keep doing what we've been doing for the last 10 years with another class. We have great educators in the state, and they have said, we're willing to change. We're willing to change what we teach, where that's necessary. And this is not a complete overhaul. And we're willing to change how we teach it. Such an important part of the Common Core Standards is not just about obtaining the knowledge, but it's the application. How do you use that information to solve real problems in today's world or in your future world? How do you read? Not only reading works of great literature, which absolutely are important, and we want kids to do that, but also we want them to read information. We want them to be able to read technical manuals. We want them to be able to know how to set up their DVD player and how to run all the options on their phones, which some of us in our generation are challenged to do. So we want both. We want them to expand. Our board adopted the Common Core Standards in Illinois in June of 2010. 100%. Districts are free to add more information if they want. And our teachers began the work of implementing the Common Core. So for 3 school years, they have been modifying their curriculum, changing their lesson plans, working on new assessments, so that, as the Congressman said, in the 2014-15 school year, there will be a new assessment to see just how well we've done with the implementation of the Common Core Standards. And as a final comment, I would just say to you, Superintendent Cook and our board did not adopt the Common Core standards because the federal government or anybody else wanted them to. They did it because they believed it was an opportunity to improve outcomes and opportunities for our young people, to give them what they needed so that they could make some good decisions about their future. The new standards are fewer, they're clear, and in most cases, the expectations are higher. I remain excited about the Common Core state standards, and I look forward to hearing that.
Very much. We're going to turn it over now to the panel, and how this is going to work is we have a moderator who's going to kind of control the time and make sure things move along, and also just listen questions that you might have later on. So how it will start though is we have 4 panelists that each will have about 8 minutes to be able to give an opening statement, and then we'll go to questions, I believe some prepared questions, and then questions from the audience. So please be thinking about questions you might have. Then we'll be having a microphone that we will come to you where you can ask your question and then get a response both for those on both sides of the issue on Common Core. So let me take this opportunity to introduce our very distinguished moderator. I'm so pleased that he's able to be here tonight. Bruno Behrend is the Executive Director of For the Good of Illinois and is a Senior Fellow of Education Policy at the Heartland Institute, which is just a fabulous organization. He is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, where he earned his degree in finance. He earned his Juris Doctorate from IIT Kent College of Law in 1990 and is licensed to practice law here in the state of Illinois. He's currently Acting Executive Director of American Transparency, a new nonprofit seeking to place all local, state, and federal spending in one easy-to-search online database and smartphone application. So please join me in welcoming our moderator, Bruno Behrend.
Thank you very much. Really quickly wanted to apologize to Congressman Hultgren that my smartphone went off in the middle of his opening remarks. I was in the process of downloading the app that was going to let me do the timing for the panelists here. And I'm sorry about that. I turned my speaker way down, and the speaker didn't go down for the little buzzers here. So that buzzer that you heard is going to go off when the folks who are speaking have reached their time deadline, at which point they do not have to immediately shut up, but they should start wrapping up their point. If they take too long to wrap up their point, the next indication for them to quiet down will be me doing some kind of Kid Rock rap or some kind of thing a cappella, at which point they will immediately stop speaking, I'm sure. Also, if there's any glitch in anything that goes on tonight, it's because we blame it on United and the fact that Bob Bowdon flew in from New Jersey and I had to pick him up at the airport. That way, no one can take any blame for anything that's wrong here, particularly me and particularly the Congressman's excellent staff. So, without further ado, I am going to announce each person as they stand up and speak with their opening remarks. We were so rushed as we came rushing in here quickly that I do not know which one of each panelist is going to be designated panelist A or panelist B, so we hope that the two of you or you guys have flipped a coin as to who's going to go first. But I'm going to introduce, so which one of you is going to go first?
Our team is first?
Yeah, your team goes first and pick someone from your team.
All right, I guess I'll go. You want me to go over there?
First I have to introduce you.
All right.
So, the first panelist, who is taking the side of, okay, this is the first glitch, pro-Common Core or anti-Common Core. I guess we're going to go with the pro side first. So this would be pro-Common Core, I'm assuming. So, have you guys picked? You'll go first, and that would be Mike Petrilli. Interestingly enough, I know a couple of these folks at my work at Heartland in education, in the free market think tank movement and the education reform movement, and we've got two fantastic people from both sides who I know here, and two other fantastic people who have taken their time to come in. So let me stipulate to the fact that Mike Petrilli has the best and biggest, coolest bio here, which I will, if Mike forgives me, I will shorten it. So Mike Petrilli is an award-winning writer, and we'll stipulate the fact that he's a really nice guy and very, very well versed in this. One of the most nation's trusted education analysts, Executive Vice President of the Thomas B. Fordham Institute. Petrilli helps to lead the country's most influential education policy think tank and contributes to his flypaper blog and weekly education gadfly newsletter. He is the author of The Diverse Schools Dilemma, A Parent's Guide to Socioeconomically Mixed Public Schools, published in 2012, and he is a research fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution and executive editor of Education Next. There's another 4 or 5 lines that actually double that, but I think you get the idea that Mike is eminently qualified to speak to us about this. So Mike, take it away for 8 minutes. Point of order from the moderator, because we want to get your questions in, and we want to have the audience get their questions in, if indeed people are articulate enough and they can go in less than 8 minutes or less than 2-minute or 1-minute responses that we have here, that just leaves more time for the audience to ask questions. Mike, sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Bruno, for that very kind introduction, and thank you, Congressman, for holding this forum, and thank you all for being here. This is a topic that's really important, and we do know from some of these recent polls that a lot of people still haven't heard about the Common Core, so we need to do a whole lot more of these things. So as Bruno said, I work at a conservative think tank. I served in the George W. Bush administration. Our president served in the Reagan administration. And most importantly, though, what you should know about me is that my sister Lisa, who is here, lives 20 minutes away in Lake Barrington. So you gave me a good excuse to come see my sister and my 2 nieces. One of my nieces, who is on the debate team at Barrington High School, and gave me some tips while we were having dinner at Panera Bread a few minutes ago. So now, in the debate world, they talk very fast. You know, they blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to do that. I think that would probably not be effective for tonight, but we'll see. Well, you'll let me know if I live up to the family reputation on that. I want to briefly talk about some common concerns that are raised about the Common Core standards, and then describe why we as a conservative think tank think that this movement is a conservative victory. But first, let me talk about some of the common concerns. And I know that they are heartfelt, and I know that there are strong opinions on all sides of this issue. This is one of these policy issues, like all policy issues, where there are pros and cons, and we all have to weigh whether the good outweighs the bad. So a couple of things that people raise. One is you hear people saying that the standards are flawed. Second, you hear people talk about the federal connection. And third, you hear people talk about whether they are linked to privacy concerns. So let me talk about each of those. First, the quality of the standards. At Fordham, as a think tank, we have been reviewing state standards for about 15 years, ever since states like Illinois started developing these standards. And every few years, we would have experts go in and look at what was in those standards. And we come at this from a fairly conservative, traditional perspective. We wanted to see things like, in the reading standards, that children were being taught phonics and phonemic awareness, that they were expected to read great works of American literature, their nation's founding documents, that sort of thing. That in math, that this was not teaching fuzzy math, that they were, kids at a young age were expected to know their math facts, to automaticity, that they could do their times tables. We did not want to see states encouraging the use of calculators when kids were very small. That was something for much later. Those sorts of things. And what we found time and time again was that most states were not doing a very good job writing standards. Probably because, as you heard the Deputy Superintendent talk about, the way they did it was they got thousands of people together, and it was kind of done by committee. And those of us, we all who have worked in committees know what can happen, that the end product isn't always as strong as it can be. Now, a handful of states like Massachusetts and Indiana did a very good job and wrote some great standards, but Illinois did not. And the last time we looked at Illinois standards in 2010, our institute gave both the reading and the math standards a D. D is in dog, and said that they were among the worst standards in the country. They were vague, they weren't very clear, and they did things like encourage calculator use in the early grades, like not mention much in terms of phonics, like not mention any of the country's founding documents as things that all kids should read. Now, you've heard the story of how the Common Core came to be. For many years before that, we were promoting this idea that it may be time that the states come together and do this jointly. That a decade had gone by, the standards weren't getting better, and it was our hypothesis that they weren't getting better because of the political dynamics. That state leaders felt like if they set the bar too high, and they ended up showing that many schools in states were failing, were not meeting those standards, that there'd be a lot of backlash. And especially from the education community, from the teacher unions and others. And so there was all this pressure to keep the standard very low. Maybe if states came together, there could be some healthy pressure and competition to aim higher and set the bar high. And in fact, that is what happened. At the end of the day, these standards, somewhat miraculously, the Common Core standards came out really well. They're quite good. In math, we gave them an A-. In English, a B+. They're not perfect. We have our quibbles with some of the things that are in those standards, but by and large, they're quite good. And they really do a faithful job of trying to look at whatever evidence we can find to say, what is it that 18-year-olds need to know and be able to do to either be able to take a credit-bearing course at a college like this one, or go in and get a decent-paying job. And it's relatively high level of math and reading skills. And so that's what those standards are about, to help students succeed. And what is very clear to us, and I think even many of the opponents of Common Core would admit, is that for a state like Illinois, there is no doubt that adopting the Common Core was a huge step up in terms of the quality of your standards. Okay? And the good news is that there's also now some further evidence that states that had standards that were most like the Common Core are the states that have done the best over the last decade. And that the Common Core are quite similar, even more similar than other state standards, to what the best countries in the world are doing in terms of focusing and coherence and the kinds of things that they're expecting. All right, so a couple other things on the specifics. You also sometimes hear people talk about Common Core is going to push out things like the reading of literature, right? Simply not true. There is an appendix in the standards that talk about all the kinds of great works of literature and nonfiction we'd like students to read, and it has the classics on there. It has Shakespeare, it has Mark Twain, all the ones you want to see. It does say that if you want to prepare students for college, they need to be able to read nonfiction, which is a lot of what you read in college, and make sense of it, but not at the expense of literature. You also hear people say that, well, the math is fuzzy math, or it doesn't expect enough of kids in order to preparing them for college. Again, as I said, these standards aren't fuzzy math. The standards you used to have were the fuzzy math standards, right? And these standards are meant to be minimal standards. What is the minimum level that most kids need to get to succeed in college or career? For kids who are going to go on to selective colleges or to careers in math or science, they need to do much more. They need to go beyond these standards. These set the threshold. All right. A couple of other things. This concern about the federal role, this is the one I think I have the most sympathy for. I certainly don't want the federal government involved in these educational decisions. But as you heard from the Deputy Superintendent, these started out as state standards. Okay? The states started this process. Then the president was elected, and he decided to politicize this issue by dangling this money, the race to the top money, part of the stimulus, for states to adopt the standards. All right, he has further politicized it, in my opinion, by taking credit for the standards on the campaign trail. Now that, I think, is a huge mistake, and I understand has caused huge concerns, understandably so. Still, the standards themselves are very strong. Okay, and I think that is what it should really come down to, is that those standards are worth supporting. And, Congress is very committed right now to make sure that the federal government doesn't spend another dime or have another mandate related to these standards. And I think that's what's going to happen going forward. So, a couple other things. I know we've got one more minute. Let me just run through a couple other ideas. Why a conservative victory? First of all, fiscal accountability and fiscal responsibility. This has the potential to save us a ton of money. We spend a lot of money in all of our states to pay for the education of kids twice. Once in the K-12 system, and then at higher ed, when they come to colleges like this and end up in remedial education, and they can't get credit for those courses because they're not prepared. The idea of these standards is to get kids better prepared, and this will do it. Also, in terms of spending, Illinois has already spent hundreds of millions of dollars implementing these standards. Right? To pull out now would mean a loss of that money that's gone into training and textbooks and other things. Second, it has been conservatives who have been in favor of accountability for our schools, for aiming high, ever since Ronald Reagan and A Nation at Risk, saying we have got to set the bar high and hold our schools accountable, and that's what this is about. And third, if we are going to be competitive with the rest of the world, including countries that are not so friendly toward our interests, like China, we cannot cede this education competition to them. And so we need to raise the bar on that as well. Other points that I'm happy to make during question time. Thank you for listening.
Next up, we are graced with the pleasure today to have another panelist on the opposing side, Bob Bowdon. He is the director of the movie The Cartel, highlighting the education establishment in New Jersey, but very well to be applied to education establishments all across the country. He has been a New Jersey-based television producer, reporter, news anchor, and commentator for the past 15 years, and his career has seen him producing television shows, hosting news programs, conducting in-depth on-camera interviews, appearing in satirical news sketches on the Onion News Network, anchoring regional news broadcasts, covering New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and shaping the Bloomberg Television's World Financial Report. He is also president and creator of now ChoiceMedia.tv, a one-stop shop for education reform, education choice, and education battles that are taking place across the country. And if you want to go and see ChoiceMedia.tv, you will find a great deal of information on that site, some of it from Mike Petrilli and other organizations, along with all kinds of other news on education. So without further ado, Bob Bowdon.
Thank you, Bruno, and I want to thank all of you for coming and being involved in this issue. As we know, not enough people are, not enough parents are, not enough taxpayers are, and so I applaud you guys for coming. I grew up mostly in Texas. The Houston Astros is one of the worst baseball teams in baseball history. Since being made in the 1960s, created at that time, we have not won a single World Series. Our one chance, our one appearance in a World Series was 2003 against the Chicago White Sox, where we were swept. So I hold resentment against you people for that. And I would like to say that the Astros' drought in the World Series wins is only eclipsed by one other team that will remain nameless. Like, way to win over the crowd. By the way, I'd also like to thank Mike Petrilli's niece for calling me to give me debate tips after talking to him, the actual other debate tips that he didn't know about. So So first of all, that's who I am. My name is Bob Bowdon. I run Choice Media. I'm not speaking on behalf of Choice Media, but these comments are just my own. We run an education, reform, and policy news service. In fact, a Twitter feed, which is very active, which is at Choice Media TV, for those of you with smartphones and computers, other things like that. So before I get on to my comments, I want to do a quick unscripted cross-examination of my colleagues. Quickly, Mike Petrilli, if you could just tell me an entree that you've had at a restaurant recently that you enjoyed. What would be an entree that you like? Any restaurant?
Yes, the Panera bread shrimp salad.
Shrimp salad, okay. And Mr. Schwarm, can you tell me a book you read in college or just a book you like, if you can't think of one from college? What's an example of a book title that you like? The Scarlet Letter, okay, good. So I will bank those responses for now, and let me move on to talk about the matter at hand. So first of all, what are Common Core standards? And the first thing I want to impress on you guys is that standards don't change teaching. And that's what's been found by a number of studies. Teachers all across America will be standing up in classrooms, they'll be doing it tomorrow, they'll have their Algebra 2 lesson, or their Shakespeare lesson, or their reading lesson in second grade prepared. And they're going to do the best job they can at teaching those things. And what's been found in studies, by starting with the Brookings Institution, is that there's no correlation between the states that have really high standards and suddenly the teachers just like trying harder. Like, I'm going to really teach this year like way harder than I did last year because someone in the state government passed, or in my local district even, passed changes to these standards. So now I'm just going to become like a way better conveyor of information or a way better shaper of young minds. It turns out that's just not, it just doesn't happen. You can just raise the standards and more kids fail. That's generally what happens, but it actually doesn't change how they teach. In fact, Rick Hanushek, a Stanford economist, actually found an inverse correlation between higher standards and the achievement of kids. Now, there are, of course, some anecdotes. They can talk about Massachusetts, for example, which has very high standards and also does very well. There are examples of states like this. We're saying, overall, if we look at all 50 states, there's no correlation in that regard. The second point I want to make is about top-down versus bottom-up. Now, standards can make sense in our world. We have 110 volts in this country. In Europe, it's about double that, right? But it's kind of good that you can go around America and plug in your hairdryer or cell phone anywhere you go and not worry about what's the voltage of this outlet. That's a standard, it's good, but it didn't come from a federal mandate.